This is Time Magazine's 10 Questions. Joining us today to return questions served up by our readers is Pete Sampras. Thanks for being here, Pete.
No problem.
Did a time come about when you felt you had had enough of competitive tennis, that the will to play in another tournament ebbed?
Well, I think after I went through 2 years of not winning an event, what kind of kept me going was winning one more major. And once I won that major, that last U.S. Open, I spent the next 6 months trying to figure out what was next. I pulled out of a bunch of events. I didn't really feel like practicing, and slowly my passion for the sport just sort of vanished. You know, I had nothing left to prove to myself. I achieved every goal that I put out there for myself. But the last straw was sort of when Wimbledon was coming around. I was practicing, I was thinking, okay, maybe I'll play Wimbledon this year. And after 3 days of practicing, I was like, you know, I just don't have it in me anymore. It's time for me to realistically, I just look at myself in the mirror and just be honest here that I really am done. It was a hard thing to accept. I just didn't want to believe it. And then, you know, that's when I knew.
As a professional athlete, you retire from your career at the same age as others fully engage in their own. How do you feel about that? And are your plans and aspirations for your next act as ambitious as those of your first?
It's a good question. It is not easy to retire at 31. In one respect, I was glad I was done. I didn't have to deal with the pressure, the stress of playing professional tennis. But after a few years of sort of having fun, playing golf and doing some fun things, I got a little bit restless, a little bit bored. And when you're 33, 34, and you don't have that focus and those goals, you can kind of get just a little bit lost. As a man, you feel a little bit unfulfilled. You feel like, you know, what am I going to do today? You know, it's just, there's not a book on retirement. It is a work in progress. And I think the one thing that's been good for me is that I'm playing tennis again. Not a ton of tennis, but just enough to keep me sharp, to keep me in shape. But it's a tricky situation for athletes that retire pretty young at 31. You have to reinvent yourself. It's a great thing to have, not have to work and do the things that I don't want to do. I can kind of make my own schedule, but at the same time, I'd like to have a little bit of focus. And that's where tennis has played a really nice part in just, you know, getting me, you know, on the tennis court, hitting a few balls every couple days. When I do put in that work, I'm a better father, I'm a better husband.
Who do you consider to be the next dominant superstar of men's tennis?
Well, obviously right now we have Federer. You know, I think after Roger, you look at Nadal, who's only 21, Djokovic, who's 21. I mean, I think those two guys are going to sort of carry the torch there when Roger's done. Even though he's still in the middle of his career. I look at Nadal, really could be someone that could dominate. He's obviously a great player on clay, but I think he can play well on other surfaces. So we'll see. I think Nadal's got a good shot.
If you could go back in time and play 3 sets of tennis with a tennis great from another generation, with each of you at your respective primes, who would you want to play? You know,
I would say probably Laver. You know, he was the player of his generation, won 2 Grand Slams, probably could have won more. He'd be someone I'd be curious to see how I might do against him.
Do you ever dream about either or both of your sons becoming successful professional tennis players, or would you rather they not?
I have thought about it and would love them to play tennis. I think it's a great sport. I think all sports keeps kids out of trouble. And if they decide to play tennis, I'm all for it. I can help them in any way they want. And if they don't, that's okay too. I'd love them to be an athlete of some sort. It's just, I think every dad certainly wants that for their kid. But if not, if they want to do something else, I'm all for it. And, you know, it's also tough for them being compared to me. Certainly a tricky thing for them to grow up with, as, you know, if they play high school tennis, college tennis, you know, it's Pete Sampras' kid. You know, it's just undue pressure, and, you know, that might scare them a little bit to want to play baseball. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
You've played on the world's best tennis courts. Which was your favorite and why?
Center court of Wimbledon. Just love the atmosphere, love the intimacy of it, love the speed of the court. Had a huge effect on me as a kid, seeing that court on TV. So that one, not to disrespect the U.S. Open and the French, but that one is the most unique. Hasn't changed in 100 years. There's no major sponsors. You know, it's just very pure, and I've always loved that.